Micro Four Thirds may seem like a lost cause to a lot of you guys now, since the full frame cameras are easily attainable. However, I still think there's some very valid reasons as to why investing in Micro Four Thirds is a sensible thing to do even in 2024, despite the tiny sensor size. I've had the new Lumix GH7 in hand now for a few weeks, and in today's video I want to tell you my 5 reasons why you should pick this Micro Four Thirds powerhouse instead of a full frame camera even in 2024. It goes without saying that I'll be looking through my filmmaking lens when I talk about the GH7 throughout this video, since the GH series is more so geared towards the video shooter, and I'd argue that the G series is more so for the photo shooter. So the first reason why I'd recommend the GH7 is actually the mount itself. The Micro Four Thirds system is so fleshed out when it comes to the lens options, and there's so many options to choose from various different brands. Another really nice thing about the Micro Four Thirds system as well is that it's very easy to adapt onto. So let's say, for example, you used to shoot Canon and you got loads of EF glass lying around, then it's actually very easy to adapt that glass to your Micro Four Thirds camera. And if you wanted to take it a little bit further, you could also get a speed booster, and then that will give you a field of view sort of closer to the Super 35 sort of look. The autofocus on the GH7 is also fantastic, since it's using the same phase detect autofocus system that we've seen inside the S5 II and the S5 IIX and also the G9 II. So that means that if you did want to adapt glass from, let's say, Canon for example, that your autofocus performance should actually be pretty good. And if you want to see how that sort of autofocus system works with adapted lenses, then you can go ahead and check out the video that I made showing EF lenses on the S5 II, but please watch this video first and go and watch that one later. The second reason why the GH7 makes a lot of sense over the full frame options is actually the processing speed, and more importantly, the rolling shutter performance. Because of the smaller sensor, it means that it's easier for Lumix to make a processor that can give you faster readout speeds when you compare that to the likes of the full frame cameras. For example, the 3x2 open gate mode has a rolling shutter of 25.4 milliseconds on the S5 II, whereas the 4x3 5.8K open gate mode on the GH7 has a rolling shutter performance of around 20 milliseconds. And this is actually the slowest readout of any of the shooting modes inside the GH7, and that's simply because we're shooting in open gate and therefore there's more information to read out. It decreases as you go to 16:9 and then a little more at 17:9, and then the lowest rolling shutter performance you can get in a 4K shooting mode is an extremely quick 7.35 milliseconds when you're shooting in 4K 120 frames a second. And that's likely because the dynamic range boost function is disabled after 4K 60p. If you're also sick and tired of that forced crop you get on the full frame cameras when you get to 4K 50 or 4K 60 frames a second, then you're going to love the GH7 because there's no crop even when you're shooting at 4K 120. If you've been shooting with Lumix cameras for a while now, then you're probably used to how spoiled we are with the open gate shooting modes. And this is actually another benefit, in my opinion, of the GH7 over the full frame counterparts. And that's because of the shape of the Micro Four Thirds sensor. So a Micro Four Thirds sensor is 4x3 and a full frame sensor is 3x2. And 4x3 naturally is more squarish in shape compared to 3x2. So therefore it almost means you're gaining a little bit more real estate on the top and the bottom as opposed to the sides. So that means that if you are someone that likes to use the open gate shooting modes for cropping different deliverables, so let's say for example doing one in vertical crop and then also one in 16:9 or widescreen, then I actually think you'll get a better result using a Micro Four Thirds sensor compared to a full frame sensor, simply because you don't have to shoot as wide and you don't have to worry too much about those crop lines. Not nearly as much, at least, as I would be if I was shooting with a full frame camera. And because of that, I actually think that the results look a little bit better on a Micro Four Thirds sensor when you are cropping for both vertical and 16:9 compared to the results I get with my full frame cameras. Circling back round to the topic of lenses again, and I actually think the next point as to why the GH7 is such a fantastic option is actually the size and the weight of the lens that you compare with it. I know the GH7 in of itself isn't a small camera, in fact it's very similar in size to the S5 II, if not it might actually be a little bit bigger, but of course the most weight that you'll have in your camera bag is normally the lenses, so therefore shedding some of that weight in your lens choices is definitely going to be a massive plus for a lot of people. In fact, you could probably get a 24-70 and a 70-200 sort of equivalent lens in the Micro Four Thirds system, and that will be much smaller and much lighter, meaning that you can literally bring out your GH7 with those two lenses in your bag, and you probably won't even feel it much on your back at all. Of course, the lenses that I chose to use, the 10-25 and the 25-50, are definitely not the most compact lenses that you can get for Micro Four Thirds. It's just that these are fast f1.7 lenses that cover the entirety of the focal range that I'd like to sort of be shooting with. So really, it was a no-brainer for me when I was testing this camera. So the final reason why I think the GH7 is such a good option even in 2024 despite how many full frame options there are on the market currently is actually the amount of codec options you have at your fingertips. You will definitely not be able to find a full frame camera on the market around the same price point that can offer ProRes RAW and ProRes HQ internally, that can also offer all intra and long GOP variants internally as well, with varying bit rates and chroma sampling as well. So there's actually so many different options that you can dial in when shooting with a GH7 depending on how much data you want to work with. You're also spoiled with the option of 2 log formats with a GH7, and that is of course Vlog and Arilog if you decide to purchase that upgrade key. And of course you can also record 32-bit flow audio internally when using the new XLR2 module. So that means that basically for any sort of video workflow, you're going to be absolutely covered in both the video side of things and the audio side of things, since you can actually use 32-bit float with the XLR outputs and also the 3.5mm stereo output as well. All of this functionality for around £2,000 is honestly insane, and genuinely I think you'd be naive to say otherwise. Also, as a quick side note, all of the footage that you've seen shot on the GH7 in this video was also shot using the brand new Zhiyun Weebill CinePeer 3E gimbal. This stabilizer is super compact and it's sort of around the same size as the RS3 Mini from DJI if you're familiar with that gimbal, so it means that it's quite compact and very easy to travel with. It also has a great payload capacity, which means it was absolutely fine carrying the GH7 with a 10-25 as well as my S5 IIX with various lenses while I was out in Japan as well. If you're in the market for a brand new gimbal that's a little bit more compact while not compromising too much on the payload capacity, then I wouldn't look too much further than the new CinePeer 3E from Zhiyun. If there's any more videos that you'd like to see surrounding the Lumix GH7, then please do let me know and I'll do my best to make it before I have to send this back. But it's a fantastic camera, honestly. I've really enjoyed shooting with it, and it's seriously making me consider using Micro Four Thirds a little bit more. If you're interested in seeing the visible differences between the long GOP and all intra codecs inside the Lumix cameras, then definitely check out this video next, because I compare long GOP and all intra footage side by side so you can see whether that higher data rate is actually worth it in the long run.